Alright, so the T20 Cricket World Cup 2024. Has it been a success, a failure? Has it been played ethically? Has it been scheduled ethically? Those are some of the questions we'll be looking at. So, first off, 20 teams played this tournament. It's one of the highest numbers ever in cricket history, especially at the highest level of the game. There were four groups, 5 teams each, and the tournament is still going on at the time that I'm making this video. Semi-finals between Afghanistan and South Africa are underway. So the question really is the tournament a success or a failure, and by what standards can we judge it? I think we'll start off by looking at some of the cons of the tournament. There was a recent discussion by David Lloyd and Jarrod Kimber, so they definitely have shared some cons which can be pointed to. For starters, they say that the games are commercialized, which is of course a fair point. You have the India-Pakistan game pre-scheduled, you have the England-Australia game that is pre-scheduled, so there is that commercialization aspect. Now, the fact that they are pre-scheduled is not in good taste, but I don't think that that creates an environment where certain teams are disfavored. So I wouldn't say that those pre-fixtures lead to situations where certain teams are disadvantaged. It's still fair play, it's still a fair tournament. So it's really an argument about holding a World Cup ethically versus letting go of millions and millions of dollars. Who's gonna win between those two forces? In the real world, we know who the winner is. It's capitalism. Well, regardless, I think there are some stronger points that they allude to. For instance, Lloyd and Kimber also discussed that the semi-final location for the India game was prefixed. So it was already decided that if India qualifies for the semi-final, the location of the semi-final is prefixed. In this case, it was Guyana, and that's why India has more spinners on their team, and because they know that that's a spin-friendly wicket, and so in that sense they did have the advantage to prepare ahead of the tournament, which no other team had. So that is a very legitimate point actually. The other thing is that the first semi-final has a reserve day, the South Africa and Afghanistan game, which is currently ongoing, but the second semi-final does not have a reserve day. So there's also this distinction between the two semi-finals. David Lloyd makes the point that India-Pakistan game should not be predetermined, and that if they were to meet each other naturally at the World Cup stage, it would be far more exciting, which I couldn't agree more with. And you know, the same goes for England, Australia, the same goes for Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, the same goes for all other teams there. Minimization of manipulation in the tournament would be great. I don't know realistically if that's possible given the commercial forces that are behind all of this, but I think we can all agree that predetermined semi-final locations and certain semi-final location conditions for one semi-final and certain conditions for another semi-final, that's completely off the table. That should not be tolerated. And there have also been concerns in this tournament about the pitches, particularly the New York pitch. It's played really badly. There are a lot of questions about how it was prepared and the way it played. Same thing with rain delays and matches being rained out completely. A lot of issues at the planning stage of this tournament which need to be looked at. And especially given that this was a World Cup, there are a lot of questions around the planning. All that being said, I must say that the tournament has still been exciting. You know, there have been positives to take out of this tournament for sure. I think the most exciting bit has been the role that associate nations have played in this tournament. One of the major goals of this tournament was that cricket is promoted in America, and the United States team actually won. They defeated Pakistan, they defeated Canada in their opening game, and they made it to the Super 8s. That in itself is a big deal. Now, whether that actually translated to cricket being promoted in America is a question mark. I don't think that cricket has reached anywhere near the level it should in the United States, but it's fair to say that that victory and that the United States qualifying into the Super 8s helped the cause of the game. You've also had the Afghanistan cricket team make it all the way to the semi-finals, to the top four, defeating Australia, defeating New Zealand, and a bunch of other teams. This has been the real story of the World Cup. And this is a country which does not have the resources to support its own cricket infrastructure. They've been touring around the world, they've been playing so much league cricket, and they've just added so much flavor to this tournament. And I think that Afghanistan have stood out, and they're the team who've, actually made this World Cup so exciting. I kind of hope that they win the World Cup. Anyway, we have Nepal, who also made the tournament exciting. That was the first time they actually came to the World Cup, and they gave South Africa a very tough time. South Africa only won by 1 run. You've also had Scotland, which at one point seemed like they would go through to the Super 8s along with Australia, and they did give a tough time to England as well. However, that match was washed out. In the end, I think we've had some pretty exciting games in this tournament, and I think T20 format is the type of format where associate nations have a better chance at getting through. The fact that Afghanistan have made it all the way to the semi-finals tells me that they're going to be a better ODI team as well, and in the future they can also be a very good test team. You see a lot more maturity with that team now. Not to move away from the topic, but ultimately I think I'll conclude by saying that I understand the commercial aspects of the game and the commercial forces. They're important to actually support and grow the game, but we do need to minimize the predetermination of matches, and especially the predetermination of outcomes and venues and conditions to certain games. This needs to go.